So I pulled out randomly what I'm going to be drawing next. First one came out as Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, and the second one came out as Mad Max Fury Road style. So stay tuned in this video because in the end I'm going to give you guys a difficulty level, 1 being really easy and 10 being really difficult of making this design. Without further ado, let's dive into it. First things first, whenever I make these designs, I use the Wacom tablet. I still have it to this day, Wacom 204 tablet. I believe they don't even make these that much anymore. First things first, I use Adobe Photoshop and I draw using the medium in 204 Wacom tablet. So in the beginning, when it came down to this sketch, at first I was making a few mistakes of having it at different angles, but then I was looking at one of the references where he just has that anger looking straight ahead look where it's close up, and I was like, you know what, that's exactly what I'm going to capture with this illustration. Here are the references that I use when making this illustration. Mainly I was focused on the likeness of him and then having the Mad Max elements in terms of his attire. Since Mad Max is a post-apocalyptic, I want to give him that aesthetic as if he's in that world. That's why it's the theme of him in the Mad Max style. That being said, I put a lot of straps on him, you know, a lot of bullets, lots of guns on his back, and then I also gave him the knife on the right hand side of his arm. I gave him that rigid feel to it as well. So of course he has facial hair, but also I wanted to show more of his muscles and then give him that chest hair, because at this point, Snake Eater is like, you know what? It is what it is. I say that all the time. But pretty much, he's just a brute at this point. This guy is a mercenary as opposed to a stealth soldier that works for some secret or intel organization. This guy is the complete opposite of that. So once the sketch was complete, this is where I transferred the files from Adobe Photoshop to Adobe Illustrator. So now here, this is when I'm utilizing the pen tool. Another thing that I noticed that even with the reference, he has this, it's almost like the same thing with Ryu, how his eyebrows kind of overlap his headband, which doesn't make any sense. But with this one here, with Snake Eater, his scowl, I should say, like all the muscles that's happening on his freckles, or why am I saying freckles? Similar to with Ryu, but with Snake Eater, all of the muscles that's happening that gives him that angry face expression, you could see it through the headband, which if you understand physics and how apparel works, that doesn't make any sense at all unless the headband is extremely tight. Or it's not a headband, it's more like a face paint. So it doesn't make sense, but hey, it works though, right? It works perfectly, you know. Or the headband is sculpted like Batman. So I didn't notice that until I was making this, so I applied that onto the illustration as well. Since he's a snake eater, I added that element to his mask. I was looking at Mad Max reference of one of the villains who had that weird gas mask, so I applied that aesthetic onto him as well. But with the combination of him being a snake eater, I added a snake type of design onto his mask. There wasn't too much detail happening, even though it looks complex as far as the detail is concerned. But as far as the execution with the pen tool tracing over the sketch, it wasn't too bad in the end. So when making the colors of this, it was pretty straightforward. I just went with the monochromatic feel of Solid Snake and just the style of it, because some of them he has like the greenish headband, and then for others, I guess the recent one that's about to come out, the headband is like a navy blue. But since this is a combination of the Mad Max theme, I decided to go with more of a warmer color, which is the green, as opposed to the cooler color, which is the navy blue. Now, the biggest challenge of the coloring was going back and forth with the color palette of his hair and how it correlates with the colors of the mask and his facial hair too. So there were certain things that felt like the contrast wasn't there as far as the blending. they start to blend too much to each other where you can't really see the mask. So that was the biggest challenge too, because then when I make the contrast too dark, now the mask is too black. So I don't want the mask to be black to the point where it flattened the mask, but at the same time, I don't want it to be light to the point where it's competing with his facial hair and his skin tone. So that was a bit of a challenge. And then the ripple cape, or I call it the vintage cape that I gave him, I was honestly contemplating whether or not I was going to have it there. I was thinking like, is it necessary? Is it overdone? But then again, it's Mad Max, right? Everything is exaggerated, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep the cape. And with that being said, with the cape, his ripped up cape, I gave it that blood type of like dark orangey red to just give it that contrast that complements the colors of green. And then the knife that I added right there on his right hand and the knife that's on the right hand side of his arm, I gave it the extra shine by using the Gaussian blur, so that way I want the viewer to see the contrast of the weapon that's popping out from the cape in the background. So once the colors was complete on Adobe Illustrator, this is when I do the final touches on Adobe Premiere. So from there, this is when I added the background, I played around with the color grading, and then I added some extra effects onto the illustration. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being really easy, 10 being really difficult of making this illustration, I have to give Solid Snake and Mad Max theme a 4 out of 10. I was contemplating whether or not I'll give it a 5 out of 10, but it was leaning more towards the easier side compared to the difficult side, mainly because of the fact that, hey, my Achilles heel are drawing hands. I could draw hands, but it just takes me longer whenever I draw hands. And since this illustration don't have that, and he's not doing a difficult gesture, he's just standing there, right? The only thing that has kinetic energy is the headband itself with all of the straps that's flowing, right? So other than that, I mean, this illustration wasn't too difficult. In fact, it took me 2 days to finish this, only 2 days to finish this illustration. Normally, if something that's really difficult, it takes me 4 days or 5 days, depending on the composition. Let me know down below, throw your suggestions on what illustrations you guys want me to make. That would be greatly appreciated. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. That really helps out with this channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.